everybody should be able to see the slides, and they're pretty short. I don't want to overload with a lot of information, but um, I think we know right now that there's three different areas of general funding. Philanthropy, there's foundations, private donors, and things like that. State funding, which I think we're all very familiar with at this point because of the work that we're trying to do around the environment and climate equity. And something that I'm fairly new to, and I'm learning how to navigate is federal funding, which for the last administration we didn't see as an avenue to move forward. There was a lot of difficulties in our community with the way that was managed, but now it's starting to open up again. And I do want to talk a little bit about that because there's some new resources that are coming out for federal funding that might be of interest to folks in PACE. So for philanthropy, this is actually the first type of funding that I became familiar with. My position originally here at my organization was created by a grant by the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, who actually believed in the portfolio that climate change and climate equity was one of the big things that needed to be addressed. Um, and in philanthropy, what I've found to just really have a lot of success is one, really describe a lot of the what you want to do, like your main mission and your objective, and that helps you build a relationship. Over the last couple of years, as I've gotten more into the grant writing and the development, it has proven that you want to build those relationships with the folks in philanthropy, with either program managers, directors for different areas, or even just folks that are working in other CBOs that sometimes kind of make that pivot into philanthropy, which then kind of builds a good repertoire, and then you actually become recommended or become one of the people that they start thinking about when they're trying to implement a new initiative or a new objective for their portfolios. So that is one way to start looking at those things when you're working through philanthropy. With the state, I have deliver on overall state objectives, and I think this is where I think we're familiar with, and that you start looking at what the state's objectives are. Emissions reductions is one of them, and in one of our areas of expertise, which is air quality, we work a lot on AB 617 and the Community Air Protection Program, and start actually working on some of these things before that was a past legislature. But it's also what we work on now, and that's our aim is to provide on a lot of these things that are in that legislature and in a lot of the overall mission and emissions reductions to get to those levels in the near future. So there is a lot of planning that goes into this, where we try to okay, to get to those overall objectives, how do we get there? And that's where we start dividing a lot of things up into the different grants for different types of pots of projects. For federal funding, again, this is fairly new to me, and I hope that we can have a conversation if anybody here today is actually more involved in it. But what I found, we just received our first federal grant in the last couple of years to do COVID outreach and COVID hesitancy education. So we're trying to educate our community to reduce vaccine hesitancy. And in speaking with my team, our county sits a little over 50% vaccination rates, like fully vaccinated. In some of the areas that we're targeting per this project, they're under 30% or floating at around 30%. And that's a huge gap that we're trying to fill. And then what I found, at least so far, and just starting with this federal funding, is that it's a lot more strict. It's a lot more admin work. You're going to do a lot of tracking of your expenses, a lot of justification for why you're trying to do what you're trying to do, the way you're doing it, and why you work with certain folks and where you don't work with certain folks. It's a lot of managing those relationships and managing that type of work, and really a lot of justification that goes into those projects. But again, you're also trying to be, when you're applying for this funding, you're going to be looking at a lot of these overall objectives and then narrowing down that vision into how does your project going to help fill that vision. And one of the ones that we're going to that I'm getting familiar with, and we'll talk a little bit about later, is is one of these cohorts that they're putting together to start applying for these federal funds that the Biden administration is going to make available this year over the next couple of months. So a lot of the times you're going to have to be looking at these further ahead. And in federal funding, it is going to be a lot more competitive. But from what I've seen this year, at least with the EPA, EJ grants that they're doing, and the EJ collaborative problem solving grants, you're finding that they're trying to, one, increase the amount and expand the overall scope of these projects. So due to COVID, they expanded what the definition of being affected by environmental hazards was due to COVID. So there might be scopes opening up and a lot more flexibility when applying to these now, or at least this year and next year, before once COVID might pass over. But this is something you also have to start watching out for. Uh, One of the things that I do want to say is that finding grants is difficult. I think the more you do it, the more it does become a little easier, but you also have to start planning ahead in case, that renewal doesn't come up, or they're switching, or, reduced funding happens, which we all saw happen last year. So, I mean, I do want to talk about three different avenues. One is grant portals. So, I think we're all familiar now with the California and the federal one for grants. So grants.gov and grants.ca.gov, which are very helpful. I think the new grant portal for the state is very helpful in that it displays a lot. I actually played around with it yesterday again, just in preparing for today. And I saw grants that are due at the end of this year. So, you can plan really far ahead. And these aren't the only portals. There's going to be some private portals. I've run into folks that have been trying to recommend us to like apply and pay for this service that finds grants for you. But sometimes these grants are just out there, and you just have to like really sometimes just look it up on certain things. But portals is one way to start looking for funding. Another is through philanthropy, and this again is where I really want to reiterate that networking and relationships play a big part of this, because once your work and your organization's work becomes known, then you start getting recommendations, then you start getting approached by foundations, and you don't have to start looking out for them. But initially, you do kind of have to build that relationship. We've had where we reached out to a foundation and told them, look, we have an idea for this project that addresses this specific issue, and if that's part of their mission, they start having that conversation with you, and then you kind of start hitting it off and building. Sometimes we've landed where it's in between funding cycles, and they're like, okay, we'll have this conversation again during the next funding cycle, and most of the time it does open up a space for, okay, here's the application. We want you to submit a full proposal or a letter of intent, and that's where it starts kind of mapping out. Uh, and networking again, I've seen many various people that have been moving from either community-based organizations or working with agencies into foundations and into other funding mechanisms that are more private. They're not public. And once you start building those relationships with those folks, if you work, let's say, with CARB or CAL FIRE, and they move into a foundation, then they know of your work. Then it's easier to kind of just reach out and say, hey, do you have any upcoming funding coming up, any open grants, or have you heard of anybody in your funding network that we might be able to reach out to? And this is what really helped us out last year in preparing our like really comprehensive COVID response, and that we had relationships with foundations that then we got initial funding from one foundation, and they told us use our name to leverage that for more funding, and that through that we were able to leverage two other foundations, and then that all that work we did before the state started responding or before the federal government started responding then put us in a place where we were doing a lot of this response work that then they set up programs for. And then we were all like, okay, we're doing all this. Can we apply for these? And the state and the federal government was like, yes, here you go. And that's how we started building our network here locally to do response. But it was a lot of just having that one relationship with one funder that then kind of like built a huge funding stream for not just us, but like we started sponsoring and recommending a lot of organizations locally because we know what our capacity is and we didn't want to overstretch. And that does tie into recommendations for private grants. Recently, we've run into a situation where there's a lot of programs that are going to be coming up, but you need a recommendation from someone to actually land in that pool of applicants. And it's not guaranteed that you're going to get the funding, but having a recommendation is sometimes a plus. And this can work one of two ways. We've seen this happen with a foundation where we were recommended by another foundation to apply for a grant. And that just gave us, okay, you have they essentially been like this. You have a positive chance of qualifying for funding. What I've seen it happen is also happened as well with a state program where we're doing outreach, and because we're uh, an organization that's already done that work as part of their first funding cycle, now we have a plus mark for a second funding cycle that we're actually up for right now. We're applying for. So this is where it does come in to just do great work, because then it starts giving you recommendations and becoming noticeable. Which again, once you become a little more public with the work you do, and you know how to advertise or brand some of the work, then you start getting these things moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because one of our projects actually stemmed down into a lot of different areas. So that's where it kind of started also building up. So this is one of the examples I'm talking about. So originally we had this project called the Imperial Project. We were the community-based organization partnering with a university and a team out of CDPH. Through that one project, we actually developed a lot of different things. We started our own community air monitoring network, which is Ivan Air, which is ongoing right now. It's already operating. It's close to finishing out its 6th year of operations. And we're expanding to almost 80 monitoring sites throughout the county, which is huge. No, I don't think there's a bigger network that's active for this long. We actually also started an internship program for environmental health literacy and advocacy. So we were able to start training high school students through an environmental health curriculum that we put together with the team from Tracking California, which is part of the CDPH before, but now they're with PHI. We were able to put this internship together, able to do 2 semesters, and those 2 semesters actually won an award from the California Endowment, which then led us to doing another round for another semester. So it did start building up. So now we have 2 different projects branching out from this one grant. And then we also, as a result of that original project, we were able to push for AB 617 and the Community Air Protection Program, because what we were finding and what we were looking at was what communities needed to start doing themselves in other areas where air districts were ignoring community concerns. So then, out of 617, there's a lot of different activities that came up, right? There's a Community Air Protection Program for the air districts and the communities, the community air grants, and now we're seeing actually another addition to the air grants. If anybody's looked at the new grant applications, there's a different category now to actually do like technical assistance and community capacity building outside of just education, but actually for emissions reductions, community planning, and things like that. And out of the original Imperial Project, we also had a lot of publications come out, and since we were one of the co-principal investigators, a lot of our team members were actually published authors out of that. And through that, there's a lot of legitimacy that builds up, and when we're speaking about these subjects, and when speaking with agencies and speaking with stakeholders, with air districts, what happens is, because you've had these things happen, and you become kind of like an authority on the programs that you're talking about. You become an authority on the concerns, and then kind of articulating from community concerns into the language that a lot of these not industry folks, but agency folks speak. So that there, it started building up. And through these publications, we've also had folks reach out to us to start trying to to become more of a TA provider. And we do that. We do that with other CDOs, but we don't want to become like a TA provider for industry, because that's not how this works. We work with community, we work with community groups. We don't work directly with industry. But it does start building up a lot. And for one grant to stem a lot of these things was pretty great. And I do want to talk a little bit more about this one, which is the continuity. So I mentioned our youth internship. Originally, that came out as a small part of the Imperial Project, but then through the endowment award, we did a third semester, and then we also took some of our money from other projects to leverage a little bit from a lot of these into a 4th semester. Through that 4th semester, we were able to apply for a small grant from the Global Wildlife Conservation Fund, which is an offshoot of the DiCaprio Foundation. And then from that, after getting that award, we were also applying in conjunction with TRDRP. So it's a tobacco-related disease research program. And between these two, we're actually now funding another 2 years of our internship. So we're going to carry on to 8 semesters with students while incorporating scientific components. So we're going to be helping them design and conduct small science experiments through the tobacco-related research. And Global Wildlife helps us carry on all that environmental health literacy curriculum. So between these two things and just, building on top of each other, we're able to continue this internship, which was it was a $10,000 pot like initially, and then it's now carrying on for close to 4 years. So you can see that once you start building one thing into another, you can get continuity for a program. And I want to explain a little bit more about that COVID response that I talked about. So initially, we received a grant from the California Endowment. What they wanted us to do is to actually start making the community resilient on its own, so that the community wasn't going to be relying on foundations and agency funding. They wanted us to start building tools and a network here to start creating an emergency response team, which Imperial doesn't have an official emergency response team. Through the endowment, we were actually able to reach out to the California Wellness Foundation, who then gave us money to start a re-granting program so that we can help other organizations that didn't have the capacity to either apply for grants or the relationships with foundations to reach out for just general funding. Because of that, we were also able to reach out to the Latino Community Foundation, which this is a fairly new funder for us, but they've now given us two different grants to actually just carry on this work. And they've actually mentored us a little bit in actually doing the re-granting program that we started with the California Wellness Foundation. So it all started building up. And at the same time we were doing all these things, we were reached out to by GSER to help in distribution of the economic assistance for undocumented immigrants. And through all these things, we were able to build this very comprehensive COVID-19 response package, which also helped us build a coalition of CBOs here. Some of them fairly new, some of them that have a history, but never had the capacity to apply for funding. So we were able to become their conduit into getting in touch with these networks. We were able to become their fiscal sponsor when these grants came in. And we were also able to just, kind of coordinate a lot of the response. So through all of this, we did direct economic assistance. So we've done between $500 and $1,000 for families, or just the different makeup of a household, not actually like a family unit, but just the household. We've been able to do pop-up vaccination clinics and host our own clinics here at our office. Initially, we started with PPE distribution. We set out a goal that was pretty lofty of 1 million masks being collected and distributed, and we went past that goal. Right now, we're still trying to get PPE out because we have about 8 or 10 different pallets of masks sitting in storage with one of our partners. And as we're still doing outreach activities, we're getting all these things out in different packaging. We were able to actually work with the county because of this funding that we had to do some advocacy as well, to establish a health equity committee, which in turn helped us actually build a relationship with one of the supervisors who actually works for one of the local hospitals, which we were then able to ask, hey, we need an equity metric for when we start doing vaccinations, because if you all remember, when vaccinations started early in the year, it went by age first, and then we're like, well, no, we have a lot of essential workers here. Farm workers are essential workers. They need to be vaccinated because they're taking a huge risk, especially with the way they're transported, the working conditions. So we're able to build in this equity metric once we built that whole relationship. And all this funding also helped us do COVID-19 testing. So the state did send their bus, we hosted it, but we were also able to take it into locations where folks don't have access to transportation to come get tested. So we took it out to work sites, we took it out to rural areas, and we were able to do all that. And as you can see, like, it wasn't just one funding stream. We were able to bring together a lot of different funding streams to be able to do this one comprehensive mission.